Hi, this is the first time for me. I've never taught jQuery before. We've used it, we've plugged it in, students have figured out how to use it on their own, but this is the first time I've taught it. These are notes that I've transferred over from my systems class, which is where we usually sneak it in, and I've enhanced them since then. Most of this is based on this book. I don't think this is the book I had you buy for this class, is it? I don't think it says jQuery. He's nodding yes, and you're nodding.
DOM script. Yeah,
It's DOM
script.
scripting, it's not jQuery. All right. Next year, this is the book for this class. Because we don't do too much with DOM scripting, but JavaScript and jQuery, half of this book is jQuery. And we're not going to get into jQuery that much, but it's nice to have this resource. These Murac books are still cheap, right? Last time I looked, they're all in the $30, $40 range. They're still pretty cheap. This is a good one to have on your shelf. You all are now at the stage where the Murac books are more valuable to you than something like the programming logic book with lots of pictures and step-by-step. You don't need that. You need quick description, a few examples, get on with life. This book does that for jQuery. I will leave this around, so if you're doing the assignment and you want to look around in it, you can borrow it from me. I have it in my office. You can also order it. Just for the people who aren't here, we'll read the ISBN, so it's in the recording, 978-189-07-74-707. So you can go look for it. It's called Murac's JavaScript and jQuery. This is my source for a lot of this stuff. The other source is this link. It's a W3 Schools link. And this one is really nice. If it comes up. Well, cool. There we go. Shows you all kinds of stuff. Shows you how to use selectors. I'm going to discuss some of this in the basics discussion here. But then there's a lot of things here that you can do with jQuery. And this really gives you a nice synopsis of what you can do. And then if you ever want to try one of these, you click on it, it opens a new tab, and you click here to fade boxes with different parameters. And this one they're fading in, so you saw them kind of come in different colors. But notice that the colors are red, green, and blue. How did they fade? jQuery. That's a jQuery function that fades in something. It doesn't have to be a color. It could probably be a picture, and it would fade the whole picture. All right, so I haven't had a chance to dig into this site as much as I like. There's all kinds of stuff here for sliding stuff up and down, animating stuff, and you can read and read and read. I haven't typed up the assignment yet, but I dreamed it up just a couple minutes ago. Your assignment for this it's a 10-point assignment with a 2-point extra credit. The 10-point assignment is to take any of your previous assignments. My advice would be HTML, because jQuery and the JavaScript that we've been writing, particularly the validation stuff, doesn't play well together. You might have to do some significant modification. But if you use one of the early JavaScript methods, or if you use one of the HTML forms that you built, incorporate 2 pieces of jQuery probably off of this page, just to demonstrate how they work. Thoroughly document that. Some of these are easy, so it's not too bad. 10 points. In my notes, did I lose my notes? I did. In my notes, I talk about what is jQuery. jQuery is just JavaScript. This is something that a lot of people have trouble getting their head around. It's JavaScript on steroids. Back in the day, when programming languages were first developed, most programming languages had limited capabilities. And those programming languages the programmers at the time who were developing the languages used a technique called bootstrap. In the old days, you pull your boots up by grabbing those straps, but you started low and then you pulled your way up. In programming, bootstrapping refers to using the foundation of the language to build new capabilities, like get random, like Volcker tools, v-title case. I'm using stuff that's already in the language to define something new. That's what jQuery is. It's JavaScript bootstrapped into something really, really powerful. Because you saw in that little bit of example that we had on the W3 Schools page there, all we had to do was say .fade. Well, where did the .fade come from? A big, huge open source library of JavaScript. Now, when I say big, huge, I mean there's lots of stuff in there, and yes, there's a fair amount of code. But last I looked, the zip download size is 38K. That's 38,000 characters. Okay, that's a few, but we get a lot of stuff in it. It's all open source. You can go to GitHub, you can go to other places, look at the source, you can write your own. A lot of people do. But at its core, jQuery is nothing but JavaScript. All that stuff that I've been teaching you to this point, put together in different ways, along with CSS, to provide some really cool capabilities. I'm sure that fading uses CSS. What do we use it for? Make things a little bigger here, so we can, oh, that's too much bigger. Okay. Open source, bunch of methods and functions somebody has already written. Cool thing, it's tested for cross-browser compatibility. So all this, does it work in IE, Firefox, Chrome junk? Not an issue with anything that's jQuery. If it's written in jQuery, it's supposed to work in all of the major browsers. So that's cool. We don't have to worry about if you implement this, does it work in my friend's browser? What I can't tell you for sure is how well does it work mobile. I haven't played with a lot of this mobile yet. We'll have to see that. Lots of special effects. We can customize forms. We can do DOM manipulation, which basically means change the HTML on the fly. Change the HTML. We've been looking at users' inputs. We've been creating document write lines, our own documents. But if you have a web page and you want to change it, that's DOM manipulation. That's the document object model. Your document has a model of how it's set up, and you can go in there and add new bullets. Some of you have done this. Add new bullets to a list. Change the text that's in a header. jQuery can do a lot of that. jQuery wasn't enough. Now there's jQuery UI, which is built off of jQuery, which was built off of JavaScript. Okay. So UI is for user interface stuff. That's a whole core of libraries. Most of them are plugins. You have to do some research to find those. I'm not going to talk about that here. I want to introduce you to that they exist. The Murak book talks about some of them. They have carousels so that you can show pictures rolling around, all that kind of slideshows. Cool. That one you'll have to look into on your own. That's the extra credit. If you incorporate a jQuery UI plugin into your homework assignment, I'll give you a couple more points. I will document all that tomorrow probably. So how do we get this library of stuff? It's like Volcker Tools. You go get it, except it's more powerful than Volcker Tools. You could go to jQuery.com, and that's the homepage for jQuery, and download it from there. But they're, like everything else, constantly updating this, particularly with new browsers coming out, mobile devices coming out. jQuery is constantly being updated. So I have never downloaded that file and used it. The Murak book shows you once you've downloaded it, where do you have to put it? Probably in your, I haven't looked at it in a while, but probably in your web page folder someplace so that you can get at it, and then you just suck that in. And that zip file version of that, and you can access it when it's zipped, which is also pretty cool. You don't have to unzip it to use it. When it comes to the minimized jQuery JavaScript files, you can use them when they're still zipped. That's cool. So it stays small. It's 39, 40K, something. That's tiny. So that's not a very big file. Better idea, however, is in your HTML to simply add a link to this page. On this page, and there we are at jQuery.com again, okay, there is a jQuery-latest.min.js file. It's a JavaScript file that has the latest edition of jQuery in it. Whenever they update it, they give it the same name. So if you make a link to this in your page, you will always be linked to the most recent version of jQuery. And please note that's jQuery, it's not the UI, the user interface version of that. So that's cool. The downside of doing it that way is that you have to be connected to the internet, but how many of you are doing homework or developing web pages while you're not connected to the internet? In the past, that was an issue. Today, it's pretty rare. So if you find yourself doing a lot of development while you're driving down the road in the car, somebody else is driving, I hope, and you don't have an internet connection because your 4G can't keep up with you or you don't want to use it for this, then download it and figure out how to plug it in offline. But for the most part, this is what I do. So let's type that in over here so we can see how that works. This page, by the way, you should recognize it. Looks familiar, but I stripped all the JavaScript out. Normal JavaScript, the way we used it, we defined a function called $, right? That $, function causes trouble because in jQuery, the $, function is built in, and it's much more powerful than ours. And we'll see that here in just a second. So I stripped all the JavaScript out. We're just going to do jQuery here. And all the validation that was in there, I just stripped it out, but it's the same page just so I have something to play with. Didn't want to set up anything too fancy here. So in the index page is where I link to my JavaScript. Okay, so there's a bunch of other ones that I'm not really using anymore, but in here I can link to that page. Let's see if I can get them both on the screen at the same time. Oh, come on. So in here I need a script tag, and with, can't even type that today. With brackets, it'll put the end script on there for me. The source equals code.jQuery-latest.min.js. The min is what most people who do JavaScript call their minimized files. There are programs that you can run against your jQuery to strip out all the character returns, comments, extra spaces, have the bare minimum, one big, huge, long line of JavaScript to run your JavaScript. Minimized. For us, we don't have anything real serious, so minimizing the stuff that we're writing doesn't save us a whole lot. The minimized file is what you post or use on your website. It's what I could give you as Volker tools, but if you want to look at the real thing, you keep the original so that you still got all the comments and spacing and all the rest of the stuff. So that's what the min means. And then we should be done. And we now have access to the full jQuery library. It's that simple.
You know you put the HTTP on it?
I missed it. You do. Otherwise, it looks for it in my document. Thank you. Okay, so now we have access to it. How do we use it? First, some basics. If you're debugging Firefox or Firebug, may report some jQuery errors. I guarantee you there's no jQuery errors in that jQuery latest file. If you're the one who finds it, that's pretty rare. Most of the time it's because you didn't invoke the jQuery properly. It's your fault. So whatever module you get in that Firebug says, this I don't understand, look what module you're in. What did you do if it was fade or whatever? Look at that name and then go look at your call and see did you call it right, because you probably screwed it up. If you're using the jQuery UI, JavaScript IDs with CSS. Oh, one of the things that's a little different about jQuery is not only do our selectors, our $, we did $, text box, $, radio button, one at a time. And they had to be objects of some kind, because the way we defined $, was get element by ID. jQuery blows that out of the water. We can do all that as well, but what jQuery allows us to do is say, find anything on this page that's formatted with this class. And that could be dozens of things, right? And change them all, make it boldface, hide it, show it. So you can find things by class, you can find things by ID, you can find things by object type, paragraphs, H1s, HRs, whatever. And you can write a selector command. But it's a combination of the IDs that we've been using and the CSS tags. And the tags themselves is really what's missing there. Before we talk about how do we select things, what are some of the capabilities, let's talk about methods, because that's what really gets stuff done. To write a jQuery method, you start with a $sign, then the object that you want to control. And this, again, does not have to be one button. I could define using this a click event for all my H1 tags. That we couldn't do with our $sign functioning. The jQuery dollar function, it's a function, but the jQuery dollar function has much greater selection capability than we had. So whatever it is you want to select goes in here. It could be just an ID, my button. Then what event do you want to respond to? And we saw some of the events that jQuery can respond to, but it can also respond to the standard events like click and focus and those kind of things. Then the way this seems, at least as far as I can tell, the way we must invoke the event handler is using an anonymous function. An anonymous function is a function that doesn't have a name, but because it's right inside this event handler thing here, it's tied to the event. It took me forever to get my head around that. If you don't quite understand it or don't worry about it. It's an anonymous function. It's a function without a name, but it's typically immediately linked to an event, like click or fade. What I haven't found how to do yet is divert this and say, I don't want it right here. I want to link it to like we did. Remember we said $button click equals this event handler, this function. I have not found a way to do that here. So with jQuery methods, as far as I can tell, you must use an anonymous function. Now what the anonymous function could do is call another function that's yours someplace else, but that seems kind of redundant. We get extra calls in there. Then there's a curly bracket, then there's the code. Then there's an end curly bracket. This is the function definition. And this can be hundreds of lines long in the curly bracket here. I'm just giving you the general outline of this thing. And then there's a parenthesis because that's the closing of the event handler thing. And then there's a semicolon. Oh boy. I always want to do it the other way, parentheses, curly bracket, because curly brackets end things, right? No, not in this case. The function definition is embedded inside the event handler definition itself. An anonymous function. Why give it a name? Doesn't need one. It's inside this event. One of the most common ones we're going to use, remember we had window onload? According to Murak, document.ready is more efficient, because it starts a little bit faster, which means the page loads a little bit faster. The user can start using any JavaScript, jQuery, whatever that's on the page a little bit faster. So this is supposed to be better, according to Murak, a little over my head, better than JavaScript, window onload. So probably going to need one of those. I hate to say probably, because I've never done any jQuery without it. But you could get away without it. I could still do window onload. But again, Murak recommends let's use document ready. Try to be able to switch back and forth here a little bit faster. So this function executes when the form is ready. It's $, and remember $, is a selector just like ours. And this is one of the weird ones. Document itself does not get quotes. It is a reserved word, if you will, referring to the entire page that we're looking at right now. When that document is ready, execute a function, an anonymous function. And at this point, I'm going to start a new line, and I'm going to remember immediately to close that in the right order. The curly bracket's the end of the function. The parentheses is the end of the event handler, which in this case is document ready. And then the semicolon is the end of the statement. They all look like that, so you get used to them after a while. But every event handler looks like that. Murak mentions that there's also a shortcut version of it. We use this on just about every page. So there's a shortcut version. You don't even have to put the document in here. You just do the $sign and then immediately jump right to the function. You want to use it, go ahead. To me, it doesn't describe very well what this function's for. It's just a function that's kind of hanging out there with a $sign on it. But it's a shortcut for document ready. I think this describes a little bit better what's going on. This is form load. It's really what we're looking at. We had window on load. This is our equivalent of form load in jQuery. And again, as Murak said, a little more efficient. So what do we do inside a document ready? About everything we did before in window on load. And most of our window on load was event handlers, defining them. So inside here, let's define an event handler. Here's an example. Said for the submit button, here's its click function. Here's what we want it to do. So let's make our submit button just do that so we can see that yes, all of this stuff seems to be working and it's linking together and doing what it's supposed to do. Before I do that, I'm going to jump to the index file and make sure that that button is called button submit. It is. And so now inside here, I can create, now here's another difference. There's the $sign. In the old days, we did quotes button submit. In jQuery, if you did that, then it would be looking for a tag named buttons. There's no such thing. Remember jQuery, the selector, the stuff inside the parentheses with the $sign could be anything. It can be an ID, it can be a paragraph, an HR, it can even be a class. Well, in this case, what's button submit? It's an ID. And in CSS, if you're referring to an ID, you use $, right? So in jQuery, you do the same thing. In CSS, if we're referring to an ID, this is what this applies to, is anything that's named title with an ID, use a $sign. Same thing here. If I want to apply this to something that is a class name, I can use the dot. Much more powerful. Takes one extra character for us to put the $sign in here and gives us the flexibility to really define event handlers for just about anything in any weird combinations. So a very common mistake for me is leaving that $sign off. And then I get an error saying, I don't know what the heck you're talking about, button submit, that's not a tag. Without a dot and without $sign, it's basically making it a tag. Button submit, dot, click, there's my event handler, parentheses, and then another anonymous function. And immediately, so I don't forget, end curly bracket, end parentheses, semicolon. You get pretty good at typing those. And brackets, in this case, indents them nicely for me. Then inside here, I can do whatever I want. Call my standard JavaScript functions, do anything. Right now, we'll just do an alert. Done. At this point, you're going, oh, big deal. I could have done that using the old technique. Yep. Sure could have. And you can mix them. As long as you don't name your function $. So I've renamed mine element, L. I could have renamed it $. I think last year some guy renamed it $_$sign. Oh my gosh. Use $_$sign when you want to refer to it the old way. And you use $sign, and you can't rename the one in jQuery, so you have to rename yours. And you could do a search and replace. Before you bring in the jQuery, do a search and replace for every $sign, change it to L, and everything still works.
Why would you want to use L instead of the $sign effort?
Because there are some things that jQuery can't do. For instance, in Firefox, whenever I refresh the page, the data all stays, right? and I don't want it to. In Firefox, in window onload, or in our old versions in window onload, the very first thing we did was said $the form.reset. There's no reset. There's no way in jQuery that I have been able to find, and I did a little research trying to find it. There's no way in jQuery to manually or programmatically reset the form. So if I want to have that same effect, I have to use the EL of the item called my form. I think that's what the form name is, .reset. This is not available, not easily, in jQuery. All the solutions I found used a loop to go through every object and clear it. No, this is quicker. So that's why. There are a few things. There are many. Once I start using jQuery, I try to use jQuery for everything. But in this case, I wanted that. And if all I'm using it for is resetting my form, what's with the R up there? Oh, it's a var, okay. If all I'm using it for is resetting the form, then maybe I should just put document.getElementById my form. Could do that too. I'm just keeping it around because it's an old friend and I don't want to get rid of it just yet. Maybe someday I'll be able to. All right, let's save that, see if things will work. So back to Chrome. Let's refresh that form. Probably ought to use Firefox because I'm a little more comfortable with it. What was the magic key? Command F. I don't remember. Where was it? History, bookmarks, window, file. Edit. Developer, there we go. Console. Please. Thank you. Uncaught reference $ is not defined. Uh-oh. My first guess is that I forgot to save the other one because we inserted it into index and I forget is it lit up and that's why it's dirty? Let's find out. Control S, dirty meaning hasn't changed. No, it just means it's selected. Thought I saved them both, but maybe not. Isn't there a dot? Yeah, there's a dot. Maybe I missed a dot. Save it one more time, refresh this page, and let's see if we're good now. And then refresh the page using the right button. Still not defined, unit 13 JS line 4. So it doesn't like my $sign. There's the first one. So according to my notes, what am I doing wrong? Nothing.
What's the source for the jQuery?
Did you put your source before your unit 13 JavaScript or after? Doesn't matter.
My guess is it doesn't matter, but maybe it does. Okay, shifting to Firefox, I know what's going on.
So I reversed them and it works on my
Okay. Not getting any errors here. And if I click the button, I get the button click sensed, just for curiosity's sake. It went away, so very good. Isn't that a lovely message? Stupid message. Okay. Questions? All right, and we want to talk about next. So that's methods. And if you want to invoke the method, you're going to invoke methods. You're going to be using these anonymous functions. I have not found a way. Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, can you just put the function without the parentheses?
No.
That didn't work?
No. I've tried all kinds of different things, even looked them up and said, I want to divert this or I want to make, I haven't been able to find it. If you can find it, I'd love to hear about it. But it's not high on my list of things to worry about. Event handlers are usually defined in the ready function. So guess what? If you have a function that does a lot of huge things, it's stuck in here. Imagine your validation program. Right? And all the complicated, it's all stuck in document ready. Seems a little weird that I can't divert that and put it someplace else. Now I could make my own function down here, a regular old JavaScript function, and call it from inside here. It just seems to me a little convoluted way to get around. So here's the ready function shortcut. Here's button click. I thought I wrote that already. It's just all in one place now. Indentation is critical, no doubt about it. Particularly these guys, make sure they line up with their dollars so that you can see that your anonymous function and your event handler have ended semicolons. You could document the heck out of those. Some easy things we can do. A couple of handy methods are show and hide. If I want to hide stuff on my form, like error markers. If I want to hide stuff on my form, it's very easy. I can just say, pick the item, whatever it is, and hide it. Even easier, again, I can use the selectors, and those are coming up here in just a second. I can use the selectors and say not only hide one, but hide every image on my form. Or everything that's formatted with this class, hide it. So I can format all my error markers with the same class so that I can use jQuery one command to say hide the error markers. Even if the style doesn't have anything in it, there's nothing in the style, I can still format them with an empty style so that I can refer to them in jQuery. Thought I had red stuff written down here. Add document, there it is. Show an alert. We'll get to those show hides in a second. So now let's talk a little bit about the selectors. Selectors are what you put inside the dollar. But unlike our dollar function that can only access one element in jQuery, it can be just about anything. It doesn't see names. Those are for server side stuff. But it sees IDs. But if you want to refer to something by ID, you have to put the # in front, just like you do in CSS. Here, it formats everything of the title class. So if I have a bunch of title headers going down my page, anything that is that class, this selector, that's a selector. Who am I talking to? Who am I affecting here? That selector applies to everything in that class on the current page. If you change pages, it shouldn't have any effect. This refers to an ID, and this refers to a tag, and then there's a whole lot more beyond that. And I cheated and I said, look in the book. You can also Google jQuery select radio. Gives me some ideas on how do I get to divide events handlers for different things. You can stack these things, and there's previous and nexts. So what I saw, I don't know if it was Adam that did or maybe it was last year. Somebody said the error markers, anything that follows an input. Follows, there's a selector for follows an input, not the input itself, but the next tag after the input. There's child tags. If this is a child of a div or child of a section, do this to it. If it's the first child, there's all kinds of bizarre ways of selecting things. Very, very complex. I'm going to keep it fairly simple. Once we've selected something, we can create an event handler. We've seen that. But we can also manipulate it. We can ask for or change its value, not by designating value, but by designating val. Value is JavaScript, right? So jQuery uses val instead. We can change the value of something, or we can ask for it using this. I think when you ask for it, you need parentheses. Or we can mess with an attribute. Remember, attributes are width, height, title, etc. Okay. Or we can mess with the CSS. We can pick something using the selector, all paragraphs. Mess with the CSS and say left dash margin is 100. And all of a sudden, when that code executes, all the paragraphs move over 100 pixels. We can do that for color or anything else. Okay. So let's try that, because if we want to hide the error for color, that's one of those error markers. In form load, this is kind of lame. Should we keep it? Let's comment that out. And before that, for no particular reason, I'm going to say, I want to select my error color. That's an ID. The error marker has an ID called error color. You might remember that from when you were doing your validation assignment. And I want to change its visibility. Visibility is a style. It is not an attribute. It's a style. If it's an attribute, remember, it's not after the style tag. For images, heights and widths and alt tags and all that kind of stuff. Those are attributes. It's not an attribute. Visibility is a style, so if I want to change its visibility, I have to say .css, parentheses, then the style name is visibility, comma, what value do you want to change it to? For visibility is not true false. It's visible or hidden. It's already hidden because it's in the HTML to do that. So this is basically overriding the HTML saying, make the error marker on color visible. I'm just doing this as an example so you can see how to get to the CSS. Any CSS tag, I'm affecting it now on the fly. Save that. And refresh the page. Now it's visible. That's done so often that they've simplified that even more. We saw it a little while ago. There's a method that simply says, show it. Even easier. Uh-oh.
You need the .css in there?
No,
Oh, okay.
not supposed to be. Because CSS, I've selected .error, and this is supposed to show it. I wonder if this happens a little too late. Go back to the CSS, save it, refresh. That works. Why wouldn't show work? All right, in the button, I'm going to try to flip that around now. When you click on the button, it does the opposite, hides it. This time I'm going to try the hide. Error color, error color. Show and hide are not CSS, they're methods that basically do that visibility command. Okay, here it is. Now when I click my button, it hides it. So why didn't the show work? Put parentheses after it, didn't I?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's a timing thing. It's too early to show it because it's still being created. Maybe.
But it's supposed to be documented already.
Pardon me?
It's supposed to be documented already.
It's in document.ready. Well, yeah, the document's supposed to be ready, but according to Murak, it might be doing this a little before that. Wow. So that didn't work, so it's a good thing I showed you the other one. It changes the CSS on it even before it's ready, maybe. I don't know, before it shows. That's interesting. And I would think that the .show method does what? Does that. Anyways, it's just a shortcut for it, I would think. I think there's even a toggle. I'm guessing now, it's not in my notes. Okay, so now it's back. Click the button, it goes away. Yeah, here's something. Click the button, it comes back. Why did it submit? Because that was my submit button. Why didn't it submit before? Because I had an error. And that first field by HTML5 is required. And so it didn't submit. You can still, inside the event handler here, say, never mind. Notice my error marker goes away when that happens. So I'm not really submitting. This test for is it there or isn't there doesn't happen until I submit. I never got to the submit because I canceled it. Interesting. Oh, how's all this stuff? You guys have been complaining all along, and so have I, about how complicated this is because some of it's in the CSS, and some of it's in the JavaScript, some of it's in the HTML, and now and then there's the when does the submit actually happen? Hope you get your head around it halfway decent because next semester we add PHP to the mix. Now where's the errors in the HTML and the PHP and the JavaScript? Could be any of them. Yes, sir.
So you don't have any JavaScript with this?
You can. I do. Right there. That's JavaScript.
No, I'm
Okay.
saying,
And so's that JavaScript. This is all JavaScript. All I'm doing-
JavaScript, like what was there for.
I could use what was there before, except all of my variable names had $signs on them. And I had, if you look through your code right now, you have $signs on everything, right? Each of your validation events defines a $PTR and a $error. You can't use that. So if you want to use any of your existing JavaScript, you can still use it. This is just fancy JavaScript. You can still use the JavaScript, but you have to rename your $function to something else. And before you try using jQuery, do a search and replace on all of them so that it replaces them, and then it should function.
I'm just curious as to like the order that it all happened.
You mean the order between document ready and window on load?
Essentially, it really doesn't matter unless you had something in HTML saying do this and then you had something.
Yeah, you're getting in over my head if you want to know the sequence of some of these things. This is obviously happening in this order, right? But this one, the fact that I couldn't show it in document ready is interesting.
I know that at Century they had a document that showed the order. It was like 4 or 5 pages.
I think I'll pass on that. All right, that's a bit of an introduction. We'll do a little bit more when we get back, just get a little more practice. But you've kind of got the idea here of jQuery. jQuery, the function is a selector, and then inside there you put IDs or tags or CSS or combinations thereof. Then you define event handlers. There are a lot of built-in methods like toggle and show, and you saw fade and slide and etc. All kinds of built-in ones. And you apply them to whoever, whenever you want.
You should rename your original function pound instead of $.
Is that legal?
I don't know.
My guess is it's not legal because I think variable names have to start with a $sign. Could name an underscore, which is even worse. I don't think pound is legal. It could be pound underscore pound, but pound is not legal because the pound is used as an ID marker, so that would cause all kinds of grief. All right, let's stop there. We'll come back. We'll do a few more examples, but that's the overview that I wanted to give you. Now let's go play with some of these things and try to find a use for them.